Good evening and welcome to part two of the Great Awakening and the Enlightenment for the Kuhn Academy with Mr. Kuhn, where we're not just learning history, we're making history. That Jonathan Edwards video apparently didn't take, so I'm going to record part two here and finish the video up. I will post a link to that. It's only like a 2-minute clip. You can, YouTube Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, to see that. But basically, this is a very angry, vengeful sermon that Edwards gives, kind of condemning the people in the colonies, specifically New England, that they have lost faith in religion and that God is not happy with what he's seeing down here, and that we need to kind of clean up our act down here on earth. All right, and it sparks this huge revival in religion and kind of brings a lot of people back into the church. Okay, so some of the consequences of the Great Awakening. Remember, this is going on in conjunction with the Enlightenment. They're kind of in response to each other. So because people are sort of using more science and reason and de-emphasizing religion, Jonathan Edwards is trying to bring people back into the church. So you see a lot of small dissenting churches rising in membership, with a lot of people joining these smaller ones and getting away from the Puritan Church and the Church of England, the Catholic Church, and these large faiths, and kind of forming smaller, more community-based churches. It puts a lot of more emotionalism into the religion. You can tell from his speech, okay, that he's very emotional. All right, sinners in the hands of an angry God. Okay, trying to really use these very strong words and fear, essentially, to have people come back into the faith. Started to appeal to the poorer folk, because the poorer people had been kind of shunned by these bigger churches. They didn't have a place in society. They didn't have the wealth. They were kind of seen as secondhand, where these churches sort of gave them more hope and more excitement to be back in religion. And obviously the focus with any religious revival is improved manners and morals. Okay, I think I mentioned this in the video that I didn't record, is that there is a second Great Awakening. It's going to occur in the 1830s and 40s. So some of you already had your light bulb go on that says, it's a good time to synthesize, or maybe even a comparison essay comparing the first Great Awakening to the second in its impact. All right, so you're going to want to come back to these notes again in February. All right. Some scholars argue or question whether or not the Great Awakening contributed to our desire to declare independence from England. All right, some arguments in favor that you'll see over here is that they use methods of like newspapers, pamphlets, outdoor rallies, radical oratory to really get people fired up and emotional, which is exactly what happened in the Revolution, the same way of communicating and spreading the word. Some of these evangelical preachers that were trying to convert people and bring them back into the faith challenged the authority of these colonial religious and political elite ruling class, which is exactly what the Revolution was, a challenge to the existing authority. So they say the seeds are kind of planted here. You're going to hear these terms new light and old light. All right? New lights are kind of people that have a new way of looking at religion and change some of the existing traditions and customs. And then your old lights are your more traditionalists that stuck to the old Puritan values and the old Puritan ways. All right? But they started basing some of the things on their individual conscience rather than this blind faith that the Puritans and Calvinists and others had believed. And the message was carried to the poor and the powerless, like women, servants, and slaves, those without property. The same people that are going to get fired up and spark the revolution and kind of support that fight against England. Now, the argument against was this was not really a true mass movement. It was limited to just New England and parts of New Jersey. It never really hit the southern colonies at all. None of your revolutionary leaders like Washington or Jefferson or Samuel Adams were part of the Great Awakening. So the same people didn't really carry over. And it was more about saving your souls. It truly was a religious movement. It was not about changing the political climate like the Enlightenment might have been, like challenging the divine right of kings, for example. There was no outcry or uprising against the king. There was no blame placed on him or any resentment there. And all these colonial governments remained in the hands of the same established church or upper classes that were in power beforehand. So you can kind of decide either way, but there are arguments on both sides about the impact of the Great Awakening. But needless to say, it does spark a new rebirth in religion that's going to continue really even to this day. All right? So thank you for listening to part two of the Great Awakening for the Kuhn Academy. And remember, we're not just learning history, we're making history. We'll see you tomorrow.